Hey everyone, George here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another edition of the Wine Insider Series. And this is kind of a special edition. For those of you that have watched before, we're always meeting different people in the industry who play different roles, get their perspective on some of what's happening out there. But with all that's happening on the real estate, the mergers and acquisitions side, we thought we'd start to spin off a little special edition of the Insider Series, focusing on talking to people who have expertise in that area. And today's our first guest is Pat DeLong. Pat is the managing partner and founder of Azur Associates. Pat has worn many, many hats in our industry. He's been around for 30 years. And Pat's going to talk a little bit about some of what they're seeing from an M&A perspective. We're going to learn a little bit more about Azur and the work that they do. So sit back. I think you're going to enjoy it. And I'm very happy that we have Pat DeLong here with us. Pat, thanks for being with us.
George, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we've been doing our Win Insider Series for a while, where I'm talking to different people, different roles in the industry, sort of getting their perspective on what's happening. And we decided to do kind of like a spin-off on it and really focus on the real estate, mergers and acquisitions, right? That's a lot of what's happening right now, or it's beginning to happen. I know you guys just did a big deal recently, which we'll talk about. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about you've done a lot of different things in the wine industry. What drew you to wine? How did you wind up in the industry?
Such a great question, George. I don't know if I can explain it myself, but so I've been in the industry almost 30 years, and I'll rewind the tape. Before that, I spent the first 10 years of my career really split between Deloitte in San Francisco, and I was in audit and got my CPA and knew I didn't want to keep doing that forever. Was going to move on, but then I moved over to consulting as Deloitte was very active in getting that going at the time. I liked consulting quite a bit. It led to a role at Carnival, the global cruise line. They had their biggest subsidiary, Holland America, is located in Seattle. So that's where I was based. Got very familiar with the flight from Seattle to Miami. But at the time, so I was in a consulting group there where they were doing quite a few acquisitions as a company themselves. Princess and Cunard and Costa and Windstar sort of all happened. So I was working with the group doing a lot of integration work, that sort of thing. And it's there I caught the wine bug, George, and I can't completely explain it, but possibly due to the fact I was in Seattle and it was cold and rainy there, and I missed wine country where I was from and that sort of thing. So I got very involved. Actually, I started taking wine and vit classes, and the rest was kind of history. And at one point, somebody at work said, "Hey, it seems like you really love this stuff. Have you ever thought about doing this for a career?" And I hadn't. But it planted the seed. So I reached out to one of my old contacts at Deloitte to sort of check in on what was going on with the wine industry. And this was the mid 90s. Everybody said the same thing. Hey, this thing's about ready to take off. So I came back to California, worked for a small boutique consulting firm, and my first big client was Robert Mondavi, which was fortunate for me. Before the end of that project, the COO at the time asked me if I wanted to come work there, and so that started my wine career, and that was the late 90s, which was just a wonderful time to be in the business with an amazing company and group of people. And I went into finance, planning, M&A, new business, which again, it was a great place to be in the late 90s. And everybody knows the story, right? The early 2000s, we sold to Constellation. And I ended up there for a period of time as well. And so I was CFO of Icon Estates when I went over to Constellation. That didn't last very long because Icon Estates didn't last very long. I moved on from there to Coppola, where I consulted for a year. Met a gentleman who became a business partner, and we started the Crimson Wine Group. At that point in time. Now, I say we started it, we did have a couple of billionaires who owned Pine Ridge and Archery Summit at the time behind us, but that was a wonderful 12 years for me. And I was COO, CFO half of that time, and then CEO for the last half. And then when I left, I really knew, or I really had a strong sense of what I wanted to do, which was to create Azur. And so that was 6 years ago. And we have two distinct segments of business. One is consulting, and the consulting side is really focused on, I'd say, three things: business intelligence, market intelligence, and brand and portfolio. We do quite a bit of work there with some folks, from our team, Dale Stratton and Danny Brager in particular. Route to market, that was really important from my perspective. Everybody wants to know how to sell more wine in different channels. And so we do both wholesale and direct to consumer work there. Ed LeMay does wholesale work, and Emily Eliasson does direct to consumer work. And then we do financial and strategy projects that could be a little more broad. And folks like Matt Parrish, who's a winemaker and viticulturist by trade, helps us with those along with some of our financial team. And then I spend all my time, George, on the M&A side of the business. And
Okay.
we do both buy side work as well as sell side work on the M&A side of things.
Well, I got to tell you, I want to go back to some of the work at Crimson. So, partners with the Saini family on our little Saini Vineyards brand, just a couple thousand cases a year. But I think we may have crossed paths because obviously some of the fruit was going into the Seghesio program, and I just want to say that with regard to Seghesio, when you guys purchased the property, there's just been so many stories where the family gets the family winery gets purchased, and it's sort of like it sort of just starts fading, going to bad right from the get-go, and that did not happen with Seghesio.
That one in particular, George, there were several things we saw on Seghesio that we thought the family had done just an amazing job with. And you certainly want to retain all of that, right? And it was a perfect fit in our portfolio. We didn't have something in Sonoma. We weren't in the Zinfandel category, and we thought Seghesio was best of class in that. And so we thought our job was, okay, let's keep the things with Seghesio that they do really well. And then let's make investments where the family may not have had the resources, both capital and team-wise, to grow the brand in wholesale and direct to consumer. But also we were able to invest in vineyards, and we built a new fermentation hall, George. I think they were really, it's hard. It can get hard to have all the capital and sales and marketing resources to do what the family would have liked to do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we saw that very clearly. So we invested a fair amount of capital on top of doing the acquisition, but our ability to grow the brand in both direct consumer and wholesale with our team was really ideal fit.
Well, like I said, I felt I had to comment on that because I definitely was one of those people that go, okay, this is the beginning of the end here. We've seen this story before, and it did not go that way. So congratulations on that. I want to talk a little about Azur for a second. So, we've worked a lot with Dale and Danny at our conferences and our webinars, and I had the opportunity to meet Emily the other day, right, who's stepped in as the interim executive director for the Sonoma County Vineyards. She's fantastic. It's a heck of a team that you've put together. Um, is what's happening now with Azur what you had envisioned, years ago, when you thought, I'm going to put together a team of experts and that can tackle whatever problem you have?
Well, you never know how these things are going to go, George. The vision definitely was I and some of the other folks that started this with me saw a gap in the industry. We knew there were good M&A firms. I had a lot of experience on the sell and buy side, big and small, and family and corporate, and felt like it could add a lot of value there. But we didn't see many other, if any, firms that were really trying to help people along the way.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a big gap. And so that was definitely the vision, and how it's played out, George. Maybe it's even better than what I thought, or some of the things were really, leaning into. Maybe there was more opportunity than we expected, but some of that's a function of the industry too,
Right.
right? It's even the last 6 years, there's been some pretty dramatic shifts, and so the degree to which we've been able to help folks out where we have expertise, it's really been rewarding, and it was what I was hoping for, but maybe even more enhancing, more complementary between the consulting side and M&A side than I expected.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that a little bit. So it's really a lot more than just, I mean, in the perfect world, putting the deal together, right? But it's also helping to make sure that whoever's coming in has the resources that they need to be successful, which is a nice to have, right? Because you hate to I would imagine putting a deal together and then watching things go sideways from there is a little bit unsatisfying.
Absolutely. And the ability to work with people before they're ready to go to market. And I think that's a really hard thing, and it's different for everybody in terms of where they are in their life cycle. But we have had a couple of projects where we've been able to work with families and brands several years in advance of them really thinking about going to market. And that's ideal. There you have an opportunity to think about, where are you today? What do you
Yeah.
do best? What can you lean into? And hey, if you're really thinking long term about an exit, here's some things people that are going to be really important that you're going to need several years to get right and work on. And so those are the ideal scenarios.
I want to ask you about that because that literally was one of the questions I had further on. Because I know that, I mean, it's funny how things have changed, Pat. From, I've been in the industry about 30 years, so about the same amount of time as you have. And, it was like you'd find out something was sold when it sold, right? It was no for sale signs out there. That was, rare and quite different than it is today. Um, I feel like I don't know anybody who's not looking for a way out right now, especially the folks that have been in it for a while. You talked about things, giving them advice on things that they could be doing now to get ready to be prepared 2 or 3 years down the road. Can you give me some examples? I mean, I imagine every single scenario is a little bit different, right? What they need to do, but in generally speaking, what sort of advice are we talking about?
Yeah, for people that want an exit, always start with two questions, and neither question is an easy one, but they're both questions you need to be honest about. And the first question is, do you actually have a history of repeating cash flows as a business? I know that sounds like a very simple question. If you don't, then folks are going to look at your business as a set of assets, right? There really isn't any brand value if you're not creating cash flow. But then it's a great question to ask yourself why, and how could I change that? And so, start with that one. And then the second one, and I love that you asked the Seghesio question, because the second one's a lot about what we did once we took it over.
Yeah.
But is the thing you want to do actually before you go to market is, have you invested in if it's vineyards, have you invested in vineyards, your facilities, your hospitality spaces, your teams? Are all of those, do you invest in those consistently enough to say that you have best of class as within your means and within your brand ethos in each of those areas? Because if you don't, um, those are all going to either be deferred maintenance for a buyer. If you're not investing in those, guess what? Deferred maintenance. Those are two of the hardest words for a buyer to face. And sometimes it's as simple as they'll reduce the deal price, but if there's a lot of deferred maintenance, it could be the difference between doing a deal and not doing a deal.
Yeah.
And so being honest about those two questions with yourself are things you really need to spend time on. And we've seen people make some great choices and do those things, but they take time in this category. And those that don't, it's going to be a lot harder to come to a common understanding of value with a buyer.
Is it more common than not that you're working with folks that just are not dealing with reality when it comes to what is this brand or property worth? I mean, the property piece is different, right? But what is this brand worth? I've been doing this for 25 years, Pat. I've got this many people in my wine club. Everybody loves our wine, blah, blah, blah. But the number that they have in their mind is like it's not reality. Like, how often is that type of conversation happening versus you're dealing with reality?
George, it sounds like you've been in our conference room for the 5 years running. It's very often, as you would expect. And I think the other thing that can happen is folks will look at transactions that took place maybe many years ago at a different time and a different situation for different reasons, and they see what people paid and they hear these numbers, but they don't really have the context. And so that's why we like to bring it back to those two questions. And in some cases, folks are very committed to doing what they need to do. And in some cases, they're not. And if they're not committed to do those things, then you have to really pivot to, okay, well, let's look at your assets. What do you have? And there could be, some people are sitting on some really valuable assets that maybe need some work that others would be interested in. But typically those conversations end up in fairly a significant difference in expectations.
Yeah.
But our job is, I feel like our job is to represent to folks what they're going to be facing long before they get to market. And hey, if we can help you work on that along the way, let's do that. If not, then we're going to have to talk about expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the matter, but it's an honesty deal, right? I mean, basically just being very straightforward with these folks, because um, otherwise it's like you've got a hell of a team. They're very busy. You can't be wasting too much time, I'd imagine. And sometimes I guess you probably just can't get on the same page, and then you just have to part ways.
That's right. And that happens too. And I think that's a function of the folks that didn't set themselves up, didn't seek help, waited too long, and
Yeah.
and, and it's really hard to help somebody who hasn't helped themselves and then all of a sudden wants
Yeah.
an immediate exit that's not realistic, right?
Yeah.
So
Come bail me out, right?
yeah. Yeah, we're
Um,
not in that business,
yeah,
George.
yeah. So you did a big deal recently, the Moët Hennessy deal, which was congratulations on that. What does a deal like that for you tell you where we're headed from a market perspective, an M&A perspective?
Really appreciate that, George. I think that deal is a good example of, the longevity of this industry and very historic asset, important place, historic brand. And look, the estate itself, I think everybody is aware, it
Yeah,
suffered through the glass fire.
yeah,
What we were so impressed with was all the work that Moët Hennessy had done to restore the infrastructure, the water infrastructure, the replanting of the vineyards, the work they'd done around fire mitigation and to really clean that property up. So when I was talking about what are you going to do as a entity, right, to invest in your assets, it would have been hard for them to do more. They didn't rebuild the winery, of course.
right.
Uh, but I think the interesting thing about it, George, their intent when they did all of that was not to sell Newton. They were actually reinvesting to create that iconic Napa brand that they always wanted. What they didn't know was going to happen was Joseph Phelps went on the market in the middle of doing all that. And of course, Insignia, the opportunity to acquire a global brand like that, I'm sure was irresistible for them.
Yeah,
So when that happened, that's when we got the phone call and look, it was a wonderful group to work with. It was a long process. And quite a few people were really interested in that transaction. And at the end, what these things come down to is um, how does it fit the long range plan of different investor groups? And so that varied for everybody. And in this case, it was some private investors who had the appetite to, carry it forward. And,
yeah,
it's great to see, that's one of the themes we're seeing right now, George, is there's an emergence of some new private investor groups that are looking at the industry right now. Everybody recognizes, hey, we're going through a little bit of a reset, but maybe we're at this point that it's time.
yeah.
And it's good to have new stewards looking at things that way.
No, I think fresh set of eyes, maybe folks that perhaps aren't burdened with doing things simply because that's the way we've always done them, right?
Mhm.
Which we know there's too much of that out there. Um, but what are these private equity firms seeing that maybe folks, within the industry are not seeing? Or is it just that the valuations are started getting more attractive? I mean, Because I'm hearing the same thing from other people that I'm chatting with.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify one thing, George. It's certain these aren't private equity folks, so it's private investors.
Okay.
More, I would say there's some family office folks out there, and but truly private investors that see this as an opportunity, for their portfolio, and I think what they see, George, and this is another thing we have conversations with everyone about when they look at this industry. Understand the time frames we're thinking about here. It's really not a 3 year, 5 year, 7 year.
Right.
I would argue really not even a 10 year. You really have to have long-term horizons. And so the fact you bring up private equity is kind of interesting because they're sort of short term in nature.
Yeah.
And they tend to have to go after really big businesses that they feel like they can turn and double in a short period of time. Whereas, a transaction like this and some others we're seeing now are folks that plan to be in this for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think those time horizons really matter.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mentioned the valuations. I mean, how has that changed over the last 10 years when you're looking at a property today versus 10 years ago, and you're looking at the brand, are the valuations changed drastically? Because we know the industry is a lot different today than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, another great question. I think it depends on the asset. So I'll use an example of a transaction we closed earlier this year that actually closed at a premium, frankly. So, and that was the sale of the Arista
Yeah.
winery estate property on West Side Road to the Chris Underwood and Young's Holdings. And that was an A+ property. Everything about it. Location, brand new winery, beautiful
Yeah.
hospitality facilities. So I thought that demonstrated strength in this category that if you truly have an A+ property, folks are going to pay full price for that because there was competition for that deal. I think nobody can ignore what happened with Vintage Wine Estates
Yeah.
last year. I don't recall in my career, 30 years going back, a transaction where you had that many estates hit the market in a bankruptcy all at once. And there's just no ignoring what that did at that
Mhm.
time. And I think the ripple effects of that are impacting valuations for what we would call it B- or C properties. And I'm not suggesting that's what Vintage Wine Estates was, but they were in a bankruptcy situation.
Yeah.
And so, the ripple effect of that has certainly had an impact on asset valuations. There's no question about that on the asset side. On the brand side, just like any category, we're in a slower growth category now. Some people would say it's mature. And when categories get mature, slower growth, multiples come down. And
Hmm.
that's a fact. And so, the multiples we used to see for brands, that's changed significantly due to the dynamics of growth in the category. So, the answer is yes, versus 10 years ago those factors impact valuations now. But I would argue that if you truly have an A+, and mind you, that's a small percentage
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
assets out there, those should still trade at fair prices.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were talking about like just to piggyback on your comment about maybe we're at a place of maturity now, so we're going to see slower growth. Is that how you look at the industry? Like, okay, this is sort of like our new. We're just kind of resetting. We're gonna because I feel like we're still going the wrong way, right? So we're gonna at some point you kind of go, okay, we stop there and we start to go back the other way. Do you think we're close to that point where we're going to start maybe going back the other way? But and not to put words in your mouth, but if when that happens, your opinion is it's just not going to be it's not going to spike, right? It's just going to, maybe a slow growth sort of a situation.
Well, I get to hear my partners talk an awful lot, so I'm going
Yeah.
to sound like a parrot here a little bit, but I think what I would suggest right now, and let's be careful about the industry too. I
Yeah.
think actually there's probably 5 or 6 or 7 different categories, right? I think the commercial below 10 part of the categories in a completely different place than
Yeah.
call it the above 50 or the above 100. So I want to be careful about that.
Yeah.
There's different things going on in those parts of the industry, but from a more macro standpoint, I think what we're seeing now is a leveling off of the declines, and that's not great. It's not what everybody wants to see, but our view is we think that is going to start to head the other way, maybe as soon as next year. We don't know, but we certainly see that leveling off, and we do start to see that trajectory change. And then for certain categories, so that's probably more broad, which
Yeah.
is influenced by more commercial price points. And I think what we're starting to see, and this has been well published, is there's an awful lot of wineries that are probably headed towards an exit or simply need to shut down. And
Yeah.
I think that will help the high end part of the industry, which is still, hanging in there right now, but too much supply, and that includes too many wineries all chasing the same consumers. And that will
Yeah.
come back into balance. How soon that is, I wish I had that crystal ball, George, but
Yeah.
um, we think in the next few years that will start to stabilize. But we do have to get through this oversupply, both the bulk and, as you know, a lot of vineyards have been torn out this year,
Yeah.
and I have a feeling in a couple of years we'll be having a different conversation. So, but we overbuilt the
Yeah.
category. That's the easiest way to put it.
No, I hope so. I hope that you're right. I mean, I think that's what's so scary for a lot of folks in the industry. At least we operate here in the North Coast, like you guys do, and uh, just the idea of like you're in the tunnel, but you can't see any light at the end of the tunnel, right? So you just kind of like you just said, hey, just get to January 2027, you're good. Okay, great. I have a target date, right? I can figure out how to get there. It's that uncertainty, I think, that just creates that level of anxiety that so many feel. But it is interesting. I was really taking a lot of notice recently, out in the Hillsburg area where I am, of not so many vineyards that haven't gone. Like last year was just so many vineyards you drive by and it's just the fruit was just hanging out there, raisening up. Versus this year, how many more vineyards have been pulled,
Yeah.
and which is a lot nicer to see because those people they're still in the game and they're going to be doing things. Um, what was it about the M&A part of what you do that was that just something that got you excited right from the get-go? You just like doing deals?
There is some energy in it. I like, George. You have to, because it's very hard.
Yeah,
It's hard work. So I don't want anybody to think there's not a lot of just really hard work that goes into this. But I think it was my experience more than anything. I was very fortunate when I got to Robert Mondavi to get exposed to the things I did. We worked on some really interesting deals where we bought some really unique estates. And then, of course, going through the transaction with Constellation, working with those teams on both sides, that was pretty extraordinary experience and certainly opened my eyes. And I learned a lot and wanted to learn more. And by the time I got to Crimson, my business partner and I and our owners were very interested in that. And so I really got more exposed to it there than anything, as we were looking at everything. We
yeah,
were wildly disciplined, which you have to be in my view. We were not gonna purchase anything that we didn't think was the right fit for our portfolio, and that we weren't going to be able to execute on. And I think we accomplished that. I'm pretty proud of that. But we probably looked. If I added everything we looked at every year over 12 years, it's not an exaggeration to say it was between 400 and 500 different types of deals, and we brought a few to the board and transacted on them. And so I think discipline is really important. And I learned so much doing that's what planted this seed for me. And look, I'm going to give some of my competitors credit here too. I got to know them well, and they're really good folks. And I was curious about their business. And like I said, when we started Azur, I felt like we could do a really good job there. But this idea of being able to help people along the way was important to me, but really important to our team too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue. for people that are interested, because there's not many people that do what you do at Azur. I don't know if anybody offers the full suite of services that you guys are able to offer. For anyone who's interested in maybe learning a little bit more about Azur, or just wanting to set up a meeting, what should they do?
Hey, we got the website. All our emails are on there, and shoot us a call or email, and we'll always respond. We can't always help. I mean, I didn't say that either, George. If we don't have the expertise to help somebody, there's a pretty good chance we know who to go to, and we do quite a bit of that too. And
Yeah.
I feel strongly that's equally our job.
Well, great, Pat. This has been really a terrific conversation. It's funny. I was telling Emily when we met that you and I were going to have this conversation, and people will tune in and watch this webinar, right? And this will live on our YouTube a channel for forever. But if we were trying to put one of these sessions like this, like an in-person session, people don't want to show up, right? They're like nervous, like if people are going to see them in the same room. So this is a great topic to tackle this way on a webinar. So yeah, thank you for your time. This has been a really good conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. I certainly did. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Oh, appreciate it, George. It's great catching up with you too.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had with Pat and learning a little bit more about Azur and the work that they do, and Pat's perspective on how he sees things unfolding in the future. And we will certainly be sure to have Pat back as a guest, perhaps when they do the next big deal. Once again, thanks for joining us. Make sure you like our YouTube channel and stay tuned for upcoming episodes of the Win Insider series.